The rain fell like bullets against the pavement outside the brownstone on Amsterdam Avenue. Inside, Claire Morrison stood in her living room holding two 3-week-old babies, Maya in her left arm, Sophie in her right, while her husband of 4 years packed her belongings into garbage bags. "David, please." Her voice was steady despite the trembling in her hands. "They're 3 weeks old. It's pouring outside. Just let us stay until morning." David didn't look up from the dresser drawer he was emptying. Her clothes landed in the black plastic bag with methodical efficiency. "You should have thought about that before you lied to me." "I didn't lie to you. I've never lied to you." "Really?" He finally turned to face her, his expression cold in a way that still shocked her after 4 years of marriage. "So you just forgot to mention that you've been meeting with men behind my back? Forgot to tell me about your little business lunches with Richard Chen?" Claire's stomach dropped. Richard Chen was her property manager, a 68-year-old grandfather who helped oversee the small apartment building her grandmother had left her in Queens. She'd met with him twice in the past month to discuss a plumbing issue. "Richard manages my grandmother's building. You know that. I've told you about. I know what you told me." David's voice was razor sharp. "My mother saw you at that restaurant in Midtown, laughing with some man, looking very comfortable. That was Richard. I showed you his business card last year when Grandma died and left me that property. David, he's almost 70 years old. My mother said you looked intimate." Claire felt the familiar despair settling over her. This was how it always went. David's mother, Patricia Morrison, had decided within weeks of the wedding that Claire wasn't good enough for her son. Every interaction since had been a war of attrition. Small comments, raised eyebrows, concerns whispered into David's ear until he started seeing threats where none existed. "Your mother," Claire said carefully, "has never liked me. You know that." "Don't talk about my mother that way." David zipped up the garbage bag. "She's been right about you from the beginning. Said you were after my money, that you were using me. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so devastating." David worked as a mid-level marketing manager, making decent money but nothing extraordinary. Claire had never needed his money, had never needed anyone's money. What David didn't know, what no one except her late grandmother and Richard Chen knew, was that Claire had spent the past 8 years building a real estate portfolio that now generated $400 million in annual revenue. Maya started crying. Then Sophie. The sound echoed through the apartment that would stop being Claire's home in approximately 15 minutes. "David, I'm begging you. Not for me. For them. They're your daughters." Something flickered across his face. Doubt, maybe, or regret for just a moment. Claire thought she saw the man she'd married. The man who'd proposed in Central Park on a snowy December evening. The man who'd cried when the pregnancy test came back positive. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened again. "My lawyer says you need to be gone by tonight. You can stay at your parents' place." "My parents are in Arizona for the winter. You know that." "Then find a hotel." He pulled out his wallet, counted out $200, and dropped the bills on the coffee table. "That should cover a few nights until you figure something out." Claire stared at the money. $200 for her and 2 newborns. In New York City, in December. The cruelty of it took her breath away. "The babies need formula, diapers. Their pediatrician appointment is Wednesday. You should have thought about that before you decided to cheat on me." He picked up the garbage bags, everything she owned compressed into 3 bags of trash, and carried them to the door. "I've already changed the locks. These keys won't work after tonight. David, get out, Claire. I'm done. He opened the door. The rain was worse now, a wall of water lit by streetlights. The temperature had dropped to near freezing. Claire looked down at her daughters, 3 weeks old, tiny, helpless, completely dependent on her. Maya had been born 4 pounds, 6 ounces. Sophie was barely 5 pounds. They were so small that regular newborn clothes didn't fit. Can you at least call me a cab? There's an Uber app on your phone. Claire's phone was almost dead. She'd meant to charge it, but had been up all night with the twins. Now she had maybe 10% battery left. She grabbed the diaper bag with one hand, somehow balanced both babies in the other arm, and walked out into the December rain. The door slammed behind her. She heard the deadbolt click. For a long moment, Claire just stood there on the stoop, rain soaking through her thin sweater, her babies crying in her arms. She had nowhere to go, no family in the city. The few friends she still had were people David had approved of, which meant people loyal to him. She thought about the buildings she owned. 42 properties across 3 boroughs, over 800 residential units, commercial spaces in Manhattan that rented for 6 figures annually. A real estate empire she had built quietly over 8 years, starting with her grandmother's single apartment building in Queens. She could go to any of those buildings right now. Could walk into the penthouse she owned in Tribeca, the one she'd never told David about. Could be warm and dry in 20 minutes. But if she did that, she'd have to explain, would have to reveal the wealth she'd kept hidden. And something told her that David finding out about her money right now, in this moment of rage, would make everything worse. So instead, she ordered an Uber with her dying phone, held her crying daughters close, and waited in the rain. Mrs. Morrison, you need to see this. Richard Chen stood in Claire's kitchen, a folder thick with documents spread across the granite counter. The twins were napping upstairs. She had maybe 30 minutes before they woke demanding to be fed again. What is it? Claire poured herself another cup of coffee. Her 3rd of the morning. Or was it her 4th? The sleep deprivation of late pregnancy had melted her brain into something that could barely remember what day it was. The Williamsburg property. The commercial building we acquired last year. Claire knew the building well. She'd spotted it 2 years ago, a neglected 4-story commercial space in a rapidly gentrifying neighborhood. The owner was elderly, overwhelmed, desperate to sell. Claire had bought it for $12 million, spent another $3 million on renovations, and leased the ground floor to a coffee chain and the upper floors to tech startups. What about it? Richard pulled out a letter with embossed letterhead. Amazon wants the entire building. They're expanding their New York operations, need a satellite office in Brooklyn. They're offering $85 million. Claire set down her coffee cup carefully. Say that number again. $85 million. For a property we're into for 15. The math was simple. If she sold, she'd net approximately $70 million after taxes and fees. Added to her existing portfolio, that would put her total net worth somewhere north of $400 million. There's more, Richard continued. I've been approached by 3 other buyers this month. One for the Long Island City warehouse complex, another for the Murray Hill residential building, and someone very interested in acquiring your entire portfolio. My entire portfolio? All 42 properties. They're offering $680 million. Claire sat down slowly. The kitchen felt like it was tilting. Who's offering that? Morrison Holdings. The name registered like a slap. Morrison? As in David's family? Richard nodded grimly. His father's company. They've apparently been researching property ownership records in Queens and Brooklyn. figured out that CM Property Holdings, your LLC, owns a significant chunk of rapidly appreciating real estate. What they don't know is who CM Property Holdings actually is. They don't know it's me. They have no idea. The LLC is registered in Delaware. Your grandmother's name was on most of the original paperwork. You've been very careful to keep your name off public records. Claire's mind raced. David's father, Robert Morrison, ran a mid-sized real estate development company. Successful, but nothing spectacular. The family had money, comfortable money, nice house in Westchester money, but not empire money. Certainly not $680 million to throw around money. Where would they get that kind of capital? Richard pulled out more documents. They're partnering with a Chinese investment firm. Morrison Holdings provides local expertise and property management. The Chinese firm provides capital. If this deal goes through, Robert Morrison becomes one of the most powerful developers in New York City. And David? Your husband is listed as VP of Acquisitions. If this deal happens, he'd be positioned to take over the company when his father retires. Claire looked down at her pregnant belly. 8 months along with twins. Exhausted, hormonal, barely able to tie her own shoes, and apparently married to a man whose entire family fortune was about to be built on acquiring her properties. What do you recommend? Richard was quiet for a long moment. Honestly? Sell to Amazon. Take the $85 million, then slowly liquidate everything else over the next 2 years. You could probably get close to $1 billion total if you're strategic about timing. And do what with $1 billion? Live your life, Claire. Travel. Spend time with your babies. You've worked like a demon for 8 years. Maybe it's time to enjoy what you've built. Claire thought about it. Thought about never having to worry about money again. About hiring help so she could actually sleep when the twins arrived. About David never having to know that his wife was wealthier than his entire family combined. Then she thought about why she'd kept it secret in the first place. Let him. We have testimony from 6 nurses about what he did yesterday. We have Dr. Patel willing to testify about his behavior during your labor. And Victoria, David leaned forward. We have Natalie Ashworth on camera in your labor room, taking pictures of you less than an hour after giving birth. The optics are catastrophic for them. Victoria closed her eyes, seeing it again. Natalie's smug smile, her hand on her pregnant belly, the flash of her phone camera capturing Victoria's tears and trauma. She said it was for legal proceedings, Victoria said quietly. Evidence of my mental state. Then we'll use it for our legal proceedings, David replied. Evidence of their cruelty, their planning, their complete disregard for your well-being. By the time I'm done, Natalie Ashworth won't be able to show her face in this city again. And Michael? David's expression went cold. Michael Hartley is about to learn what happens when you underestimate a Chen woman. Your grandmother built an import empire from nothing. You just closed a $15 billion deal while 9 months pregnant. He thought he was destroying someone weak. He destroyed someone who was about to become unstoppable, Victoria finished. Exactly. Grace stirred in her bassinet, made a small sound. Victoria reached over, lifted her daughter, settled her against her chest. The weight of her, the warmth, the absolute trust. It steadied something in Victoria that Michael's cruelty had tried to break. I want full custody, Victoria said. I want the house. And I want him to understand, truly understand, that the biggest mistake of his life was walking out on us in that labor room. David began making notes. We can do better than that. The NAREI deal includes provisions for regional offices. One of them is slated for Dallas, Michael's family's home base. You have final say on all infrastructure projects in the region. The implications settled into the room like smoke from an explosion. Hartley Commercial Real Estate, Victoria said slowly. They own dozens of properties that would be perfect for renewable energy installations. Solar panels, wind infrastructure, smart grid technology. All of which would require approval from the CEO of Nari, David confirmed. You could make them partners in the most lucrative infrastructure project in Texas history. Or you could ensure they never touch a single contract. Victoria looked down at Grace, at her daughter's perfect face, and felt her grandmother's voice echoing in her mind. Chen women don't break. We bend and grow stronger. I want to give them a choice, she said. Michael can settle quietly, agree to my terms, stay away from Grace and me. If he does that, his family's company can bid on NAREI contracts like everyone else. Fair competition. And if he fights? Victoria's smile was cold, sharp, absolutely certain. Then I'll make sure Hartley Commercial Real Estate never gets a single contract, not just from Nari, from anyone I have influence with. By the time I'm done, Michael's family will lose everything they've built. And they'll know it was because he brought his mistress into my labor room while our daughter was less than an hour old. David nodded slowly. That's the Victoria Chen I know. The one who built a company from nothing. The one who just changed the energy landscape of an entire continent. He tried to erase her, Victoria said quietly. Tried to make me think she was gone. But she was just waiting for the right moment to come back. And now? Victoria adjusted Grace in her arms, felt her daughter's tiny heartbeat against her chest. Now she's back, and she's going to show Michael Hartley what mercy looks like, and what justice looks like when mercy is refused. The meeting with Catherine Zhang. Week 1, Part 2, 1,500 words. Catherine Zhang arrived at the hospital on Victoria's third day postpartum, carrying a briefcase, 3 Starbucks lattes, and the kind of focused intensity that had made her one of the most respected CFOs in the energy sector. She was 43, brilliant, calculated in a way that made board members nervous and investors thrilled. Victoria had hired her 2 years ago, promoted her to CFO within 6 months, and trusted her with the financial architecture of deals that most people couldn't even comprehend. Catherine had also been one of 3 people who knew about the Nari negotiations. She'd run the numbers, structured the financing, and spent 18 months building a deal so complex and so perfect that 3 governments had signed off on it without hesitation. You look like hell, Catherine said, settling into the visitor's chair and handing Victoria a latte. Which is understandable given that you gave birth 4 days ago and your husband is apparently a sociopath. Victoria laughed despite herself. Don't hold back, Catherine. I never do. You know that. Catherine pulled out her tablet. David filled me in on the situation. Michael served you with divorce papers in your labor room. Brought his pregnant mistress. Froze your accounts. Generally behaved like the kind of man who should be launched into the sun. That's an accurate summary. Good. Then let's talk about how we're going to destroy him financially. Catherine's smile was predatory. Because I've spent the last 2 days digging into Hartley Commercial Real Estate. And Victoria, they're a house of cards waiting for someone to blow on them. Over the next hour, while Grace slept and nurses came and went, Catherine laid out a financial picture that made Victoria's jaw drop. Hartley Commercial Real Estate looks successful on paper, Catherine explained, charts and graphs appearing on her tablet screen. They own properties in Dallas, Houston, Austin. They lease to major corporations. Annual revenue is around $200 million. But dig deeper. She swiped to another screen, and you see debt. Massive debt. How massive? $350 million in loans secured against their properties, most of them taken out in the last 3 years. Catherine pulled up more documents. Michael's father, Richard Hartley, is dying. Pancreatic cancer. He's got maybe 6 months left. The family has been desperately trying to consolidate their holdings before he passes, and they've been over-leveraging everything to do it. Victoria felt a cold understanding settle into her bones. Michael needed money. He needed it fast. Exactly. And you, with your Nari ideal, with your success, with your growing power, you were supposed to be his financial safety net. The wife who'd built an empire he could access through community property laws. Catherine's eyes were hard. He didn't leave you because he fell in love with Natalie Ashworth. He left you because he thought you were weak, that your success was over, and that he could take whatever you'd built and use it to save his family company. But I wasn't weak, Victoria said slowly. I was building the biggest deal of my career, which he found out about in the worst possible way. Catherine grinned. Can you imagine? He humiliates you, freezes your accounts, plans to take you for everything you have. And then he discovers you had just closed a $15 billion deal, and he's legally entitled to exactly nothing from it because you signed before filing for divorce. Victoria thought about Michael's face in that labor room, the way it had gone from smug satisfaction to pale shock when he'd seen the emails on her phone, the dawning horror as he realized what he'd done. He thought he was destroying me, she said. He was actually destroying himself. Comprehensively, Catherine agreed, and we're going to help that destruction along. Because, Victoria, here's the beautiful part. Hartley Commercial Real Estate needs capital. They need it desperately. In about 8 weeks, they have a balloon payment due on one of their biggest loans, $40 million. Can they make it? Not easily. They've been counting on some contracts they're bidding on. Corporate leases, government facilities, some private development deals. Catherine paused. Deals that, interestingly, would benefit from renewable energy infrastructure. Solar installations, smart grid technology, the kind of thing NARI specializes in. The implications hung in the air between them. They were going to leverage my work, Victoria said. Use my deals, my connections, my success to save their company. That was the plan. Michael marries the brilliant renewable energy CEO. His family gets access to her expertise and connections. They pivot their properties to green infrastructure. They become partners in the new energy economy. And Michael's father dies, knowing the family business is secure. But now you're filing for divorce. Now you control NARI and all its contracts. Now, Hartley Commercial Real Estate is a company that humiliated your CEO in her labor room. Catherine's smile was razor sharp. Good luck getting those contracts now. Victoria felt something cold and focused settle into her chest. Not revenge. Revenge was hot, emotional, messy. This was justice. This was consequences. This was showing Michael Hartley what it meant to underestimate a Chen woman. I want to offer them a choice, Victoria said. Catherine raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. Michael settles the divorce quietly, agrees to my custody terms, issues a public apology for his behavior in the labor room. If he does that, his family's company can bid on NARI contracts fairly. No special treatment, but no blacklisting either. And if he refuses? Then we make sure every potential client, every investor, every contractor knows exactly what Michael Hartley did. We make sure Hartley Commercial Real Estate becomes toxic. And when they can't make that $40 million balloon payment in 8 weeks, we buy their debt at a discount and foreclose. Catherine was quiet for a long moment, studying Victoria's face. That's brilliant. Also ruthless. I approve completely. My grandmother used to say, "Give your enemies enough rope to hang themselves. Then hold the rope steady while they do it." Victoria looked down at Grace, sleeping peacefully in her arms. Michael made his choice in that labor room. Now he lives with the consequences. When do you want to make the offer? Next week, after the Nari announcement goes public. I want him to see exactly what he lost first. Want him to watch me on every business channel, read about me in every publication, understand that while he was planning my destruction, I was building an empire. Catherine nodded, making notes on her tablet. Let's prepare the documentation. In the meantime, I've been fielding calls from board members, investors, partners. Everyone wants to meet the woman who pulled off the Nare deal. You're going to be in high demand, Victoria. Good. Victoria felt something fierce and protective surge through her. I spent 4 years making myself smaller for a man who wanted me weak. I'm done being small. I'm done apologizing for my success. I'm done pretending I'm anything less than what I am. And what are you? Victoria looked at Catherine, then down at her daughter, then out the window at the city beyond. I'm a woman who closed a $15 billion deal while 9 months pregnant. I'm a mother who will protect her daughter from anyone who tries to diminish her. I'm someone who gives people chances to do the right thing, and who shows no mercy when they choose cruelty instead. She turned back to Catherine, her voice steel hard and absolutely certain. I'm Victoria Chen, and Michael Hartley is about to learn that the biggest mistake he ever made was thinking I needed him. Catherine raised her coffee cup in a toast to showing them what we're made of. Victoria clinked her cup against Catherine's, feeling Grace's weight in her arms, feeling the future spreading out before them like a battlefield she was finally ready to dominate. To justice, she said, and to making sure Grace grows up knowing her mother never stays down. Hospital discharge and first days home. Week 1, Part 3, 1-800 words. Victoria left the hospital 5 days after giving birth. Walking out the main entrance with Grace in a car seat carrier and an entourage that would have made a celebrity jealous. David Morrison on her left, briefcase in hand, already fielding calls from reporters who'd somehow learned about the Nari deal ahead of schedule. Catherine Zhang on her right, tablet out, managing a crisis with a supplier in Mexico who was nervous about the CEO transition. 2 security guards front and back, private security David had insisted on after Michael sent a series of increasingly unhinged text messages. The messages had started around 2 a.m. the night before. We need to talk. This is insane. Victoria, please, I made a mistake. You can't just shut me out. She's my daughter too. My lawyers say you can't do this. You can't take everything. Fine, be that way. You'll regret this. I'm coming to the hospital. We're going to discuss this like adults. David had forwarded them all to the police, had the restraining order expedited. By 8 a.m., Michael Hartley was legally forbidden from coming within 500 feet of Victoria or Grace. He'd shown up at the hospital anyway at 9:15 a.m. Security had escorted him out while he screamed about his rights, about his daughter, about how Victoria was manipulating everyone. 3 nurses had witnessed the scene. Dr. Patel had filed an official complaint. The hospital's legal team was considering banning him permanently. Now, walking to the car with Grace, sleeping peacefully in her carrier, Victoria felt the weight of it all. The divorce, the deal, the transformation from wife to single mother in less than a week. The absolute certainty that her life would never be the same. You okay? Catherine asked quietly. Honestly, I don't know. Victoria adjusted Grace's sunshade, protecting her daughter from the bright morning light. 5 days ago, I had a husband, a home, a life that made sense. Now I'm walking out of a hospital into a world where I'm one of the most powerful business executives in North America and also a single mother with a 5-day-old baby. You can be both, Catherine said. Strong women have been doing it for generations. My grandmother did it, Victoria said. She raised my mother alone after my grandfather died, built her business, put my mom through college, never complained, never apologized. She paused. She used to say, Chen women don't break, we bend and grow stronger. She sounds fierce. She was. She survived the Cultural Revolution, escaped China with nothing, built an import business that put 2 kids through Yale. She died 5 years ago, but I still hear her voice in my head. Victoria smiled softly. She would have loved Grace. They reached the car, a black SUV with tinted windows and a driver David had vetted personally. Victoria was about to buckle Grace into the car seat base when she noticed the small wrapped package on the seat. What's this? Open it, David said. Victoria unwrapped the paper carefully, one-handed. Grace still in her carrier. Inside was a leather-bound journal, expensive and elegant, with Victoria Chen embossed on the cover in gold. It's from your team, Catherine explained. Everyone who worked on the Nari ideal. We wanted you to have something to document this journey. For Grace, when she's older. So she knows what her mother was doing when she came into the world. Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. You guys are invested in your success, David interrupted. Not just professionally, personally. You're building something bigger than a business deal, Victoria. You're building a legacy. For Grace, for women like you, for everyone who's ever been underestimated. Victoria opened the journal. On the first page, written in Catherine's precise handwriting. Dear Grace, your mother is the strongest woman we've ever known. When you read this someday, you'll understand why. This journal documents the moment she rebuilt her life from the ground up and changed the world while doing it. Love, the Nari team. Victoria couldn't speak, could only hold the journal and blink back tears while Grace slept peacefully, completely unaware of the monumental life she'd been born into. The apartment David had arranged was in downtown Austin, 45th floor. 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. It was furnished but impersonal, the kind of place executives stayed during short-term corporate relocations. Victoria had insisted on it. Refused to go back to the house she'd shared with Michael. Refused to sleep in the bed where he'd lied beside her for 4 years. Refused to walk through rooms filled with memories of a marriage that had been built on deception. It's temporary, David had explained. Just until we sort out the property division. You can find something permanent later. But standing in the living room with Grace in her arms, Victoria felt something click into place. This was hers. Every inch of it. No history, no ghosts, no memories of who she used to be when she was trying to be small enough for Michael to love. The nursery David's team had set up was perfect. White furniture, soft yellow walls, a mobile of stars and moons hanging over the crib. Someone had thought to include a rocking chair by the window, positioned perfectly to catch the morning light. Victoria settled into that chair with Grace, looked out at the city below, and felt her grandmother's presence like a hand on her shoulder. We made it, Nai, she whispered in Mandarin. Your great-granddaughter and me. We survived. Her phone buzzed, a text from David. Press release goes out tomorrow at 9 a.m. EST. Prepare for your life to change. Victoria looked down at Grace, at this tiny person who'd entered the world in the middle of chaos and somehow slept through all of it with perfect peace. "Your life's already changed, baby girl," she said softly. "We're just getting started." That night, Victoria wrote her first entry in the journal. Day 5. Postpartum Grace. Elizabeth Chen was born 5 days ago during the biggest storm of my life. Her father left us in the labor room less than an hour after she was born. He thought I was weak, thought I'd stopped building, stopped fighting, stopped being anyone who mattered. He was wrong. While he was planning my destruction, I was building an empire. While he was choosing his mistress over his family, I was changing the energy landscape of an entire continent. While he was underestimating me, I was proving exactly why that's the biggest mistake anyone can make. Tomorrow, the world finds out about the Nari deal. Tomorrow, I become one of the youngest female CEOs to lead a mega infrastructure project. Tomorrow, everyone who doubted me, including Michael, learns who I really am. But tonight, I'm just a mother, holding my daughter, listening to her breathe, promising her that she'll never see me be small, never hear me apologize for being powerful, never learn that a woman has to diminish herself to be loved. Chen women don't break. We bend and grow stronger. And Grace, we're going to show the world just how strong we can be. Victoria closed the journal, looked out at the city lights, and felt the future spreading before her like a battlefield she was finally ready to dominate. Monday morning, the press release would go out. By Tuesday, she'd be on the cover of every business publication on the continent. By Wednesday, she'd be in meetings with world leaders. And somewhere in Dallas, Michael Hartley would be watching his mistake become the defining moment of his life. Justice was coming. Victoria Chen was just getting started. The press release that changed everything. Week 2, Part 1, 2,500 words. The press release went live at 9 a.m. EST on Monday morning. Victoria was feeding Grace when her phone started blowing up. First 1 notification, then 10, then too many to count. Text messages, emails, missed calls, social media alerts. A digital tsunami that crashed over her in waves. Catherine had warned her it would be big. David had said to expect significant media interest. But nothing had prepared her for the reality of becoming one of the most talked about business executives in North America in less than 60 seconds. Her phone rang. "Catherine, have you seen it?" Catherine's voice was excited, almost giddy. "Victoria, have you looked at the coverage?" "I'm feeding Grace. What's happening?" "Everything. It's everywhere. Bloomberg, WSJ, Financial Times, Reuters. Everyone's leading with it. Victoria Chen closes historic $15 billion renewable energy deal. Youngest female CEO to lead continental infrastructure project. Chen Energy Revolution, how one woman changed the power landscape. Victoria, you're trending on Twitter, number 3 worldwide. Victoria felt something tighten in her chest. This was what she'd worked for, what she'd built in secret for 18 months. But hearing it described, understanding the scope of what she'd accomplished, it was overwhelming. "What are they saying?" she asked. Catherine read from what sounded like multiple tabs open on her computer. Business Insider calls you the most influential energy executive since Elon Musk started Tesla. Forbes is calling the Nari deal transformative for clean energy infrastructure. The Financial Times has a 6,000-word analysis of how you structured the financing. She paused. Victoria, CNN wants you for a primetime interview. So does CNBC. And 60 Minutes just called asking about a profile piece. Victoria looked down at Grace, nursing peacefully, completely unaware that her mother had just become one of the most sought-after interviews in business media. "What did you tell them?" "That you're considering all opportunities but prioritizing family time with your newborn daughter." Catherine's voice softened. "Which is true. You just gave birth 6 days ago. No one expects you to jump right back into 18-hour workdays." But Victoria's mind was already racing. The press release, the coverage. Michael reading about it right now, understanding the full scope of what he'd walked away from. "Send me the links," Victoria said. "All of them. I want to see everything." "Victoria, I need to know what he's seeing, Catherine. Need to understand how this looks from the outside." A pause, then, quietly. "It looks like you're unstoppable. It looks like you built something extraordinary while everyone, including your husband, underestimated you. It looks like justice." Victoria felt tears prick her eyes. "Good. Send me the links." Over the next 2 hours, while Grace napped and Victoria recovered on the couch, she read every article, every analysis, every opinion piece about the NAR-EI deal. The coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Publications praised her vision, her execution, her ability to bring together 3 governments and dozens of private investors into a unified infrastructure project. They called her brilliant, innovative, a game changer for the industry. But some articles went deeper. Started asking questions about her personal life, her husband, her family. The Dallas Morning News ran a piece titled, "Who is Victoria Chen, the Austin executive behind the NAR deal?" It included her background, her education, her company history. And, buried in the 8th paragraph, Chen, 32, is married to Michael Hartley, son of Dallas commercial real estate magnate Richard Hartley. The couple welcomed their first child last week. Representatives for Chen declined to comment on how she balanced closing the NAR deal while in the final weeks of pregnancy. Victoria stared at that paragraph. Is married. Present tense. As if her marriage wasn't currently imploding. As if Michael hadn't served her with divorce papers in her labor room. As if everything was fine. She wondered if Michael had seen it. Wondered if he'd read that paragraph and felt the full weight of his mistake settling onto his shoulders like concrete. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "You can't hide behind your success forever. Grace deserves to know her father. We need to talk. M." Victoria's hand tightened on her phone. He'd gotten a new number, circumventing the restraining order by claiming he just wanted to talk about their daughter, using Grace as leverage, as an excuse, as a weapon. She forwarded the message to David with a single word. "Evidence." His response came immediately. "Got it. Documenting everything. Don't respond." But Victoria wanted to respond. Wanted to tell Michael exactly what she thought of his sudden interest in fatherhood now that he realized what he'd lost. Wanted to ask where this concern for Grace had been when he was bringing his pregnant mistress into the labor room. Instead, she blocked the number. Picked up Grace Huestases, who was starting to fuss, and carried her to the window. "Look at that, baby girl," Victoria said softly, pointing at the city below. "That's the world we're going to change. That's the future we're building. And your father? He's not part of it. He made his choice." Grace made a small sound, her tiny hand gripping Victoria's finger. "You and me," Victoria whispered. "That's all we need." "You're moving where?" Claire's roommate Sarah had stared at her like she'd announced plans to join a cult. "Queens? My grandmother left me an apartment building." "Your grandmother who lived in that tiny rent-controlled apartment?" Claire nodded. It had been a shock to her, too. Grandma Rose had lived simply her entire life. Same one-bedroom apartment in Astoria for 40 years, shopping at discount grocery stores, wearing the same winter coat for a decade. What nobody knew was that Rose had been buying properties since the 1980s. Small apartment buildings mostly, nothing fancy. 6 units here, 8 units there. Buildings in neighborhoods that weren't fashionable yet, but had good bones and would appreciate over time. She'd bought her first building in 1984 for $200,000, money she'd saved working as a seamstress for 30 years. By the time she died, she owned 7 buildings across Queens, worth approximately $15 million, and she'd left everything to Claire. The buildings all have property managers, Claire explained. They basically run themselves. I'm just going to learn the business. Maybe fix them up a little. Grandma always said real estate was the only way working people built wealth. But you have a degree in art history, which qualifies me for exactly nothing in the actual job market. Sarah had sighed. Just don't turn into one of those landlord people. You know, the ones who jack up rent and push out long-time tenants. Claire had promised she wouldn't, and she'd kept that promise. What she'd done instead was learn everything she possibly could about real estate investment, property management, renovation, and development. She'd spent 6 months just talking to her grandmother's tenants, understanding their needs, learning what made a building work. Then she'd started making changes. Small ones at first. New appliances in units where tenants had been dealing with 1970s equipment. Upgraded heating systems, proper insulation. Nothing fancy, but everything functional, efficient, respectful of the people who lived there. Her tenants had noticed. Word spread. Vacancy rates dropped to almost zero. People wanted to live in Claire's buildings because they were well maintained, and she wasn't constantly trying to push them out for higher-paying tenants. Then she'd bought her 8th building. A foreclosed property in Jackson Heights, 24 units, complete disaster. The previous owner had let it deteriorate for years. Claire had spent $800,000 buying it and another $400,000 renovating it properly. Within 2 years, it was generating $300,000 annually in net income. That's when she'd understood. This wasn't just about maintaining her grandmother's legacy. This was about building an empire. She'd met David 3 years into that journey. She had 19 properties by then, worth roughly $45 million total, making her a millionaire by any measure. But she'd been careful, never mentioned the properties. When David asked what she did, she'd said property management, which was true technically. He'd assumed she managed properties for other people. She'd never corrected him. Why? Because when you're a woman in your mid-20s who owns $45 million in real estate, men react in one of 2 ways. They're either intimidated, or they see you as a target. Claire had wanted someone who would love her for her, not for her money, or despite her money. Just her. David had seemed perfect. Kind, funny, ambitious in his own right. He'd never asked probing questions about her finances, had seemed content with their comfortable but not extravagant lifestyle. His mother, though. Patricia had asked questions from day one. What does your family do? Where did you go to school? What neighborhood did you grow up in? Translation: Are you good enough for my son? Claire's answers: working-class family, public university, grew up in a rent-controlled apartment, had clearly not impressed. She's after your money, Patricia had told David within weeks of their engagement. Claire had overheard it at a family dinner. These girls from nowhere, they see a successful man and they latch on. David had defended her then, had told his mother that Claire was different, that she worked hard, that money wasn't what mattered. But the seed was planted, and over 4 years of marriage, Patricia had watered it carefully. Claire stood in the rain outside what used to be her home. Her phone dying, her babies crying, and made a decision. She wasn't going to hide anymore. Richard Chen arrived in 15 minutes. How he got there so fast, she didn't know and didn't ask. He pulled up in a black SUV, jumped out with an umbrella, and helped her get the twins into car seats he'd somehow already installed in his back seat. "Where to?" he asked once they were all inside, heat blasting, rain drumming on the roof. Claire looked at her daughters. Sophie had finally stopped crying. Maya was making little snuffling sounds against Claire's shoulder. "The Tribeca penthouse." Richard raised his eyebrows. "You sure? I'm done hiding." The penthouse was 4,000 square feet of floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick. Claire had bought the building 3 years ago, gutted the top floor, and created something that was hers alone. She'd never spent a single night there, had kept it as some kind of insurance policy, a place that existed separate from her marriage. Now, standing in the vast living room while Richard brought up the diaper bags, she finally understood why she'd created this space. She'd known. On some level, she'd always known she might need an escape. "I'll have cleaners come tomorrow," Richard said. "Get the nursery set up properly. You need anything tonight?" "Just..." Claire looked around at the empty space. "I need to think." After Richard left, Claire fed the twins, changed them, and finally got them both sleeping in the single portable crib Richard had picked up on his way over. Then she sat on the floor of her empty penthouse and let herself feel everything she'd been holding back: rage, grief, humiliation, fear, and underneath it all, something else. Something cold and focused. David had thrown her out in the rain with their 3-week-old daughters. Had believed his mother's lies over Claire's truth. Had chosen cruelty over compassion at the moment she'd needed him most. He'd made his choice. Now she'd make hers. Claire pulled out her laptop, opened the encrypted folder where she kept all her business documents, and started making calls. David Morrison woke up the morning after throwing his wife out and felt something he didn't expect: guilt. He'd lain awake most of the night, his mother's voice in his head warring with images of Claire standing in the rain, holding their babies. She'd looked so small, so helpless. Maybe he'd overreacted. He called her phone, straight to voicemail. He tried again an hour later, same result. By noon, he was worried. By evening, he was panicking. Where had she gone? Were the babies okay? What if something had happened? He called her parents in Arizona. They hadn't heard from her. He called the friends she'd been closest to before they got married. Some woman named Bethany she'd stopped seeing after his mother said Bethany seemed negative. Bethany had hung up on him after calling him several creative names. He drove to the hospital where she'd given birth, thinking maybe she'd gone there. Nothing. Finally, he called his mother. "She's probably staying in some cheap hotel, playing the victim," Patricia said dismissively. "Don't let her manipulate you, David. You did the right thing. A woman who would betray you like that doesn't deserve..." "Mom, she's got our daughters. I don't even know if they're safe." "Then maybe she should have thought about that before she started cheating on you." David hung up, feeling sick. He tried Claire's phone every hour for the next 3 days, never got through. On the 4th day, his lawyer called. "Mr. Morrison, we have a situation." "What kind of situation?" "Your wife's attorney has filed paperwork. Custody, divorce, restraining order. But that's not the interesting part." "What's the interesting part?" "The address listed for your wife is a penthouse in Tribeca. The ownership records show it's owned by CM Property Holdings, LLC." David frowned. So? So I ran the LLC. It's owned by your wife. And according to property records, CM Property Holdings owns 42 other properties across New York City. The words didn't make sense. That's impossible. Claire doesn't own property. Her grandmother left her one small building in Queens. Her grandmother left her 7 buildings. Your wife has acquired 35 more in the past 8 years. Current estimated value of the portfolio is $850 million. Annual revenue is approximately $400 million. David's vision went spotty. You're wrong. You have to be wrong. I've verified everything twice. Your wife is one of the wealthiest property owners in New York City. And Mr. Morrison? The lawyer paused. There's one more thing you should know. What? Morrison Holdings, your father's company, has been negotiating to acquire CM Property Holdings' entire portfolio. The deal is worth $680 million. You've been in some of those meetings. David's stomach dropped. No, we're buying from some LLC, some Chinese investment group, or the LLC is your wife's. Your father's been negotiating with your wife's property manager for 6 months. They have no idea CM Property Holdings is Claire Morrison. David sat down heavily. His wife who he'd thrown out in the rain with $200. His wife who he'd accused of cheating, of being a gold digger, of using him. His wife was worth $400 million, and his father's entire business expansion was dependent on buying her properties. Oh God, David whispered. Yeah, his lawyer said. Oh, God is right. Claire agreed to see David exactly once. Not at her penthouse, not at his apartment, at a conference room in Richard Chen's office building in Midtown. David arrived 10 minutes early, looking like he hadn't slept in a week, which, according to the private investigator Claire had hired, he hadn't. Claire arrived exactly on time, wearing a charcoal suit she'd bought specifically for this meeting. She looked successful, powerful, untouchable, everything she'd been while married to him, but he'd never bothered to see. Claire. He stood up when she entered. Thank you for agreeing to meet. I need to explain. I need to tell you. Sit down, David. He sat. Claire sat across from him, her attorney on one side, Richard on the other. David's lawyer wasn't present. This wasn't that kind of meeting. I'm going to talk, Claire said calmly. You're going to listen. Then we're going to discuss exactly once how this is going to work. Clear? David nodded mutely. For 8 years, I've been building a real estate portfolio. I started with the properties my grandmother left me. I worked 18-hour days while going to night school for my MBA. I learned property management, renovation, financing, development. I was good at it, very good. Good enough that I now own property worth $850 million. David's face was ashen. I never told you because I wanted someone who would love me for me. Not my money. Not my properties. Not what I could give them. Just me. Claire's voice was steady. I thought you were that person. I am. You threw me out in the rain with our 3-week-old daughters. You gave me $200 and told me to find a hotel. You believed your mother's lies over my truth without even asking for my side of the story. I know, and I'm so sorry. Your father's company has been trying to acquire my properties for 6 months. Did you know that? David nodded miserably. I just found out. The deal was worth $680 million, was worth, past tense, because I withdrew my properties from the market yesterday. Your father's expansion plan is dead. Claire, I'm not finished. Your mother has spent 4 years making my life miserable, poisoning you against me, telling you I was after your money. Claire laughed, sharp and bitter. I have $400 million, David. I didn't need your money. I needed your love, your support, your trust. You gave me none of those things. I was wrong. I see that now. God, Claire, I was so wrong. Yes, you were. Claire pulled out a folder. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign away all parental rights to Maya and Sophie. In exchange, I won't pursue child support. You'll have no custody, no visitation, no claim to their lives whatsoever. You can't. I can. And I will. Because you threw my children out in the rain like garbage. What kind of father does that? David's hands were shaking. Please, let me make this right. There is no making this right. You made your choice. You chose your mother over your family. You chose cruelty over compassion. You chose wrong. Claire stood. Sign the papers, David. Move on with your life, and know that every day for the rest of yours, you'll remember the night you threw away everything that mattered. She walked out without looking back. Sophie and Maya were running through the penthouse, shrieking with laughter. They'd just turned 2, and they were at that perfect age where everything was hilarious and nothing was scary. Claire watched them from the kitchen, coffee in hand, and felt something she had never expected to feel again after that night in the rain. Peace. The divorce had been finalized within 6 months. David had signed away his parental rights without a fight. According to her private investigator, he'd moved to California, taken a job with a tech company, started therapy. Morrison Holdings had collapsed within a year of losing the CM Property Holdings deal. Robert Morrison was facing bankruptcy. Patricia Morrison was no longer on the board of the country club. Claire felt no satisfaction in their downfall, just exhaustion at how much energy they'd wasted trying to destroy her. She'd sold half her portfolio over the past 2 years, kept the properties in good neighborhoods, the ones with stable tenants and steady income, used the profits to establish a foundation for single mothers, spent her time between property management and raising her daughters. It was a good life, a quiet life, the kind of life her grandmother would have been proud of. Mama. Sophie ran over, grabbed her hand. Park? After lunch, baby. Park now. Claire laughed, scooped up her daughter. Lunch first, park after, that's the deal. Maya toddled over, not wanting to be left out. Me too. You too. She held both her daughters, breathed in the smell of their hair, and thought about the woman she'd been 2 years ago. Standing in the rain, babies in her arms, nowhere to go. That woman was still her, would always be part of her. But she'd been transformed by fire into something stronger, something unbreakable. Her phone buzzed, a text from Richard. Amazon's back, raising their offer to $95 million for the Williamsburg building. Interested? Claire looked at her daughters, at the life she'd built, at the empire she'd created in silence and was now managing in peace. She texted back, "Let's talk tomorrow. Today I'm taking my girls to the park." Some things mattered more than money. Some things, Claire had learned, mattered more than anything.